Insurance agents from around the world, welcome to the Insurance Guys podcast. My name is Scott Howell, your fearless host and leader, insurance agency owner and insurance evangelist for I Protect Insurance and Financial Services, based out of Huntsville, Alabama. And before we get started in today's episode, please help me welcome. He is a 6'3" sophomore from Mobile, Alabama, parade first team All-American, Rivals 5-star recruit. He is a fantastic insurance agent and a great American. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the incomparable Mr. Bradley Flowers. How are you, Bradley?
Better than I deserve. How are you, Scott?
Best I've ever been.
That's my
Bradley.
Dave Ramsey impression.
Oh, yeah, I like that. Dave still got you blocked on Twitter?
Still has me blocked on Twitter.
Unfortunate. Bradley, you know what Mike Stromso told me one time? This is the basis behind some of what we're going to talk about today with our all-star guest and one of my favorite human beings on the planet of Earth.
I don't know what it was, but I bet it was an acronym.
No. First time I ever met Mike Stromso, he said, he's speaking at this Hawksoft users conference. I think it's the first one they ever had back in like 2016, 17. He said
They snuck you in the back door, didn't they?
They did. I wasn't even a user at the time. He said, guys, if y'all want to make a little bit of money in the insurance business, sell personal lines. If you want to make a lot of money in the insurance business, sell mid-market commercial. And if you want to make Oprah Winfrey money and have your own helicopter and live in a 10,000 square foot house in Beverly Hills and go to the finest restaurants and date supermodels or, you know, drive a McLaren or whatever you want to do, you need to get a program, develop a program for something with some premium, or become like a Lloyd's cover holder, like you got the pen to that thing that everybody wants, right? That's how you do it, guys. It's not a super complicated formula, as I tell lots of my clients all the time that want to call and skin off in my front yard and fist fight. Baby, we ain't doing brain surgery here. We're just tying shoelaces. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're here today to talk about, guys. And we've got one of my favorite people in the world on this planet to talk about how do we become a cover holder? How do we get that pen?
And what is a cover holder?
You know, what is a cover holder?
We had Aaron speak at the first One City World Tour on this very topic.
Yep. But that's been a hot minute ago, by the way.
And it was a room full of very sophisticated insurance folks. And I asked, if you remember, Aaron, who here knows what a cover holder is? And I think one hand went up.
Yeah.
Now, we're more familiar with it down here in Alabama because of the coastal exposure and that sort of thing.
Sure.
But, Aaron is a Lloyd's cover holder. And He's going to explain to us what that is and how he became one and what that means for insurance.
You know, Bradley, before I give him the introduction he's always deserved, I need to apologize to our listening audience because Bradley just mentioned something that I know some of you out there right now are thinking, well, damn, Bradley, if Aaron spoke at the One City World Tour in Denver, Colorado at the damn Broncos Stadium, why not release that as a podcast? Why not release that footage to the world so that other insurance agents and professionals can hear that and absorb that knowledge, gain that wisdom to then go out into the big bad world and become a cover holder, to get the pen, to create programs, to better their family, to have generational wealth that not only their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren can absorb and create and take people from poverty and lift them up into having the standard of living and the life that each one of them deserve. Would you like to explain why you can't do that, Bradley?
Our videographer dropped the hard drive on his way back to the airport, and all of the footage was lost and gone forever.
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our all-star guest today.
The second year.
Forgot about that year.
Another videographer decided that he just didn't want to work. And when I got all the footage back, it was totally useless. I think he was hiding in the corner the whole time. And he was
he was hiding in the green room.
Yeah, very, very shortly after relieved of his duties. which is why we have Rand now, who is a professional.
That would be a correct assessment of the situation in its totality.
I actually told him before you got here, I said, the reason we hire him, I told him, I said, we could hire somebody who would be a lot cheaper, but the reason we hire him is he's a professional and we don't have to worry about anything.
Correct.
He just gets here and does his job.
Rand, all true on all points. Thank you so much for what you do for us because, you know, as you can tell from the Martin Luther-esque type diatribe that I started on, and then the big finale of just absolutely shitting the bed in its entirety, we need you.
We need you more than you need us.
You need us by far. Ladies and gentlemen, let me give him the introduction he's always deserved so we can talk through this. He was born, raised, and lives in San Diego, California, my favorite city in the world. I am my best person. I am my best self in San Diego, California. He is married to Desiree. They have two beautiful babies who are now about like mine. They're all grown. Peyton, age 20, and Olivia, age 14. Guys, if you get a chance to listen to this podcast, and maybe your dad will send it to you as a link in your text message, do me a favor. Now I believe Peyton's up in the Northeast. He's UC Irvine. I believe he's going to
down
school
there,
right now.
Down there by Daniel Song.
Not far, yeah. Peyton, I want you and Olivia to do Uncle Scott a favor. Now, I don't ask much from y'all, and I'll never ask you for anything else in your whole life, I promise. But do me a favor. I love your daddy. And he has a resume of success, and he's been very successful in this game we called life. And I know how much he loves both of you. But do me a favor, one favor. I want you to either call him, because I know how busy you probably both are. But better would be next time you go by his house, hug his neck and tell him how proud you are of him and how much you love him. And that would mean more to him than anything you could ever give him. I need you to do me that favor. That's not much, but that's what I'm asking. Now, with that said, he's a graduate of San Diego State University, former captive agent with farmers from 1996 to 2019, and he now, since 2019, is an independent insurance agent and Lloyd's Coverholder since 2017. But more important than all of that, he is my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, second-time guest on the IGP, Mr. Aaron Farmer. How are you, Aaron?
I'm great, Scott. Thank you so much. Really appreciate being
here. You're the best, brother. Hey, we got a lot to talk about today. Since the last time you and I have really been able to talk and see each other, I think you came on, we talked a little bit about Top Dog Insurance, which is still out there. We've still got, agents signing up and selling policies. But let's just not even act like there's anybody listening to this. Bring me up to speed on what's been going on since then, because that's been a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we when I was a farmer's agent, we started getting into the flood space.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a few others out there that were doing some similar stuff, but I got into it really because trying to sell home and auto is tough.
Yes.
And I thought, if we could maybe do something else and then back into home and auto, right? Mm-hmm. That was really the idea. And we got into pay-per-click through Google. At that time, it was pretty inexpensive. We all of a sudden we were getting a lot of quotes were coming in,
right? And
we were writing a lot, a fair amount of business. The premiums were small, but effectively you get to the point where you started going, well, do we really? What value is the wholesaler bringing to you?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of agents think that every day. Well, they don't. All they do is send me the quote, or type of thing. And I'm not suggesting there's a lot of value out there, but for us, we just thought, well, maybe we should look to see if we can do this ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so we contacted Lloyd's, and they hung up on me. They didn't give me more than about 20 seconds. They have a couple people in the United States, right? They are in charge of different areas, and their job is to promote Lloyd's in America. And you met the president.
Sure.
Yep. Former president.
In New York. He's actually he was born in San Diego, La Jolla. Yeah, he's a great guy. And uh,
Hank
so,
Watkins,
so
by the
anyway,
way.
they hung up on me and said, "No, we're not interested." And said, "Okay,
Now, wait a minute. I got to stop you right there. Now, you
yeah,
were already a Lloyd's cover holder, or are you going back to 2017 when this all
yeah."
happened?
Sorry, I'm going. I'm leading up to the 2017. I apologize.
Gotcha.
So were you a
It's how we
farmer's
sort of.
agent when you called them?
I
Because
was.
that's even funnier.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's how I went independent.
I was about to say, farmers was probably like, "Wait, what are you doing?"
Oh, it's a good one, Scott. I'll tell you this. So we were doing pay per click, and we had someone call us. We're in San Diego, and someone called
Sure.
for a flood quote in San Francisco.
Yep.
And so we asked him, "Hey, are you interested in a home auto?" And he said, "No, thank you." Okay, no problem. We wrote the flood. About 2 weeks later, get a call from a good friend of mine, a farmer's agent from San Diego, screaming at me that I was stole his client who was in San Francisco. It's this guy. I mean, smallest world, ever.
Yeah. Right.
And he went to Farmers Corporate and said, "Hey, this agent's doing all this stuff," and they called me and said, "We want to have a meeting. We got to talk about this." And I said, "All right, come on in." And they said, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm selling flood insurance private." "Oh, you can't do that." I said, "Yeah, I think I can." And I had my contract. It was one page. I mean, you guys
Right.
are
Yeah.
old, captives, and
Yeah.
the contracts have changed, right? But mine was one
Yeah.
page. And anyway, they just said, "We really, really, really would like you to not do this." And at that time, I had a pretty good book with farmers.
Hold on just a second. Hold on just a second, Aaron. So there's one thing, one of my agents that I consider a business partner. He manages and runs one of our offices for I Protect Insurance. Was a farmer's agent, and I have friends who are farmers agents, and I have people who have been with my agency in the past that were principal farmer agents. And farmers is kind of an unusual animal in that in Alabama anyway, and I'm saying this from not third-hand information, but second-hand information, if you know what I mean. It's almost like farmers corporate, which, most of that farmer stuff has always been heavier concentrated on the West Coast, right? That's kind of
Mhm.
been their jam. But in Alabama anyway, I can't speak for other states. It's almost like they know they're not competitive in Alabama for home and auto insurance, but you have this captive contract, and it feels like to me that all of them talk about this as agents, and there's almost this unspoken gentleman's agreement, not in writing, that we'll go broker all this stuff with other carriers. And farmers just kind of seems like they turn their head to that. Like, well, yeah, we're not real competitive right now, so let them go sell something. But then I'm wondering, did they walk in your office and start asking you and getting the little bit petite, a little upset about you doing this flood because maybe they were designing at farmers a flood program that you would then be competing against?
That's a great question, Scott. So you're 100% right. But here's the deal. There's a couple contracts out there. So the older agents,
Yep.
the old guys like me, um, we had it's that first right of refusal, right? The new
Mm-hmm.
agents sign a contract and they don't allow them to do that. And what they do is they've set up their own brokerage. So they
The
make their
Craft
agents go
Lake.
through their own brokerage because they want a piece of the action. They don't make anything
Yes.
when an agent goes
And the
outside.
and the farmers has to decline the risk first before they can submit it to Craft Lake, I'm told.
Well, yes, and I do believe some things are changing there. I know, I don't know exactly, so don't hold me to it, but my
Sure.
understanding is, they've got some contracts now with Safeco, Progressive, and a few things like that. But the poor agents, I don't feel bad. They were my brothers and sisters out there, but I hear they get like 4% or 3%. It's crazy. And then Farmers takes their cut, right? And they control the business.
Yeah.
So
No, you're
yes,
talking about broker that they have to broker
Yeah.
something. They're only getting like 3 or 4% commission.
absolutely. And when it came to flood, no one was really doing it back then. No one really understood it. And I think it was more of a situation where, you know, when you're captive, we're all the same. We're all equal. And so you can't have one rogue agent doing something like that where the others
Right.
don't have access or don't know about it. They don't like that, right? It's like we got to put an end to
Sure.
that. We're all kind of the same
Yeah.
thing, even though we
Yeah.
weren't. So that's kind of how that went down. But I didn't want to lose the farmers agency. It was a good agency, and I had a mortgage and kids in high school and
Absolutely.
whatnot. So I brought on a partner, and we created another entity, and she ran that business and helped grow it. Um, and Ironically, we as a wholesaler in MGA, we have hundreds of farmers agents that come to us, and it's the actual thing that got me, why I
Sure.
resigned and eventually
Sure.
left. But which is the irony of the whole thing. But yeah, so we contacted them, uh, and there was a thing called Chart. It was a group. I don't know if you guys heard about that a couple years back. And it was basically they got some London underwriters to come to America, and they said, "Hey, if you have some ideas, like I know Bradley has a lot of them, hey, come and let's talk." And I missed it by a week, but I called someone there. He was a Lloyd's broker, and he just said, "Hey, what's going on?" I said, "I've got these flood policies," and he said, "All right, tell me more." And next, it turned to another conversation and another, and then they flew out to meet us, and that's really how it went. Um, Basically, you have an idea, and they take it to the syndicate. So if you're a cover holder, you must have a London broker. You cannot go to Lloyd's on your own.
So define for the audience, define the difference between syndicate, Lloyd's broker, and cover holder.
Great question.
Because I think sometimes as agents, we lump all those things together.
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest things that people always get wrong is they wrongly assume that Lloyd's is a carrier,
Yeah.
right? Lloyd's is not a carrier. Lloyd's is a marketplace. So if you see the picture behind me,
You got to be watching on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, subscribe to YouTube and you can see Aaron's picture.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think, and I said this at the One World Tour, I think it's the best analogy, and that is think of it, Lloyd's is like the NFL. So you have all these football teams, they're all trying to beat each other,
Right.
but they don't want to hurt each other either. So they want to win. Someone wants to win the Super Bowl and make a lot of money, but they don't want to see the last place team go out of business.
Right.
That's not good for the brand. And so Lloyd's is really a brand, and in a marketplace, and there is a president and people in charge, and they make sure that these syndicates stay in business. So so the syndicates could be you and I. We could be a syndicate. Basically, anyone can be one. You got to have a lot of money, and these syndicates go out and get investor money, and the investors want a return. And so the syndicates then go to cover holders around the world, people with programs and ideas, and they basically invest. They give you the capacity, right? They give you the money in case there's a claim.
And for those of you listening, if you see a Lloyd's binder or deck page, a lot of times, I think it's at the top left, you'll see certain underwriters, Lloyd's of London with a number. And then under that, you'll see certain underwriters, Lloyd's of London with a different number. Those are the different syndicates that are partnering on that risk.
Yeah, exactly. And again, to use the same analogy, Scott, Bradley, and Aaron, we could each have our own syndicate, right? And I might specialize in flood. Bradley specializes in small property, and Scott is in large, commercial property.
Dynamite factories.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The picture that I see behind you, which is basically, and for those of you that aren't on YouTube, it's a little Wall Street-esque, I guess would be the best way I can describe it. But Aaron, each one of those tables where you see, it almost looks like a library in some ways, but there's just people everywhere at different workstations and tables. Is each one of those tables with multiple people around it, is that a syndicate? Everybody there's in a syndicate, that syndicate?
All the syndicates have desks, yes, and they are broken up by type or line of business. So you have a section that might be political and political type stuff, war stuff.
They're not dealing with a lot right now.
Yeah.
They're a little busy. And then you have another part that, could be marine, right? Ocean, cargo. Then you have another. So yes, each floors have the different lines, and all the syndicates are there. And what you kind of see is when the syndicates, the underwriters, they're in the box, and they're supposed to be there, once a week or every day. Someone is there. And what you normally get in this picture is there's really two things that syndicates do for cover holders. There's something called delegated authority and then open market risk. Okay, what are the difference? Delegated authority is when you get the pen, right? Your program is you go to Lloyd's and say, I want to write flood insurance in these states under these parameters. And you work with them and they say, okay, but we don't want anything within 100 yards of the Mississippi, and we don't want anything. And you say, okay, we'll agree to it. Now they've given you delegated authority, the authority to bind a policy that they will back up, right? What you see here is generally open market risk. So you've got this massive shopping mall. It's got some hair on it, couple big claims. There was a fire. There was a slip and fall, and the premium's $800,000, let's say, and the domestic carriers are all, we're out. Loss runs suck. We don't want this.
Yeah, we're not.
Of course, then you say, well, Lloyd's will take it. Well, they may or they may not, but if you're a cover holder, you have your Lloyd's broker, and his or her job is to run in this building and try and get at the desk and start getting them to sign on to that risk.
And they'll piece it together sometimes, which is what I was referring to earlier. You may have 3 or 4 cover holders that say, I'm going to take a percentage of this.
Kind of like reinsurance, really, right? They're spreading the risk out among. Am I right about this, Bradley? Am I correct that they're spreading that risk out over 2 or 3 syndicates or more, so not any one syndicate has too much of that risk? Is that right?
100%. And as it gets bigger, or as a program gets bigger, I've seen some that have like 25 syndicates on it. So there's some syndicates that may have 1% or 0.5%, because they want some of the action. But then someone else comes along. Let's take cyber. I mean, I know cyber's kind of it's in the news a lot.
It's over talked about.
And you've got, let's say, all these syndicates on cyber, and we like cyber, we're a syndicate, and so but we only get 1%. We're tail end. But then someone else, new player comes in, we may jump off that 1% because they're going to let us take 10%.
Yeah.
And so these guys are constantly shifting around their resources. But Scott, to answer your question, or what you said, yes, they always want to spread their risk. Generally, it's rare that they will take 100% of the risk.
So your broker, you alluded to it a little bit, but go into the role of the Lloyd's broker now.
So yes. So let's say we are flood experts. We understand it, and there are a handful of syndicates that do property. So not every syndicate does everything. So there is a middlewoman, and that is the Lloyd's broker. And there are X amount of shops that have X amount of employees or people, and their job is we sort of hire them. They come and solicit us and say, hey, Aaron, I can do a great job for you. I'm going to get you more capacity. I'm going to get you, get you in more states. That's my job. That's what I'm going to do for you. And then you sign a contract, and then their job is to run around, not just in here in the Lloyd's building, but all the syndicates are all within a mile, right? All those big, tall buildings you see. And they knock on those doors and say, hey, syndicate, I got this guy, Aaron Farmer in San Diego. He's got a flood program. Really want to talk to you about it. And they say, okay, come on in. Let's have a cup of coffee. Let's talk. And hey, this Aaron guy, he's really smart. He's really doing some good stuff. And they go, okay, yeah, sounds good. We'll buy into some of this. Yeah. That's what their job is to sell us to the syndicates.
Right.
And are they acting, once it's sold, are they acting as your program administrator as well, that handles all the regulatory stuff and all that?
No.
No. Okay.
No. No. What they do is, so yes and no. the regulatory, they do have big compliance teams to make sure, yes, that
Yeah.
things are being followed, the rules are being followed. So at the end of the month, if we write a certain amount of policies, that's their premium, right? I got to send them every month their money, and we send it to
The broker.
the broker and their department, and then how they get it to the syndicates. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's what they do.
you are technically the program administrator then.
Correct.
Okay, and that's where the cover holder comes in. So explain what that is.
Wait, before you get to that, Aaron, real briefly, I want to go back because earlier in this conversation, and I want to make sure. So my job is to represent all of the thousands and thousands of insurance agents across the world listening to this, and make sure, because it's real easy. Because you and Bradley are both really smart and you understand this.
It's debatable.
I, on the other hand, barely finished 8th grade, and I had the same teacher in most of my classes, if you know what I mean. So going back to something you said earlier, though, you said I could be a syndicate, Bradley could be a syndicate, you could be a syndicate. But actually, that's not true, because it sounds as though if I was going to be a syndicate, I would have to be over there, right? Because you said those guys have to, be in the office at least once a week or whatever their schedule's like. But the other question is am I right about that? You can't be in a syndicate and be and live in the United States, can you?
Well,
or can you?
I mean, some syndicates like Travelers is one, and they're in the United States, but they have yes an office there and a desk and the whole thing.
So okay.
Correct.
So here's my next question, and I'm going backwards to go forwards. So each one of these syndicates you said is backed by a group of people or somebody with a lot of money, right? This investment into that syndicate. Who's doing that? Are these private individuals? Like, say, somebody over here.
What Scott's asking is, can he invest in a syndicate?
No, I can't afford to. I can't. If I could go around the world on a nickel, I couldn't get out of my front yard. I'm saying, like, who can invest in a syndicate? Private individuals, corporations.
So yeah, my understanding is anyone can invest. A lot of people, you can invest like a stock. You can invest in some of these syndicates. The original thing was they were called the names, right? The names. And so that's when you had I think a lot of this has changed, but originally a lot of wealthy individuals. So we had tons of money in the bank. We were the names, and we would put our name to a certain percent.
Right.
And then I think that all ended when the asbestos claims back in the day. There was like unlimited liability, and all these names got obliterated.
Wiped out, yeah.
Wiped out. So they changed kind of the structure so that there isn't, unlimited liability anymore. But effectively, a few people that are pretty smart at they understand insurance, but they know how to get money. Yeah. And it's mostly investment banking money. So investment banks have money. They want to make more money. They give it to a syndicate and say, here, go make us some money.
Yeah. Yeah.
It trickles down. So
Makes
it trickles
sense.
down to a cover holder, even a small one like me. Because at the end of the day, they don't care how big you are. All they say is, don't lose this money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that now let's go forward. Bradley said, explain what a cover holder is. You are a cover holder. Explain what that is.
So a cover holder is simply someone that has a contract with Lloyd's.
Yeah.
To sell a Lloyd's policy.
Yeah.
I think
and
that's
you are effectively acting as the MGA/underwriter.
Correct. We have a contract. They use these fancy terms. I think it's called tribunalized. So, they check you out, you business plans and financials and all that. And then if someone has to, one of the syndicates have to sort of take you under their wing, and they say, okay, we're going to take this guy and, we'll take him on as a new cover holder. Yeah. And for that, we've been vetted is probably the best way to say it, is we've been vetted. We're in their system. They have this computer system. They know everything. They know more about us than we do about ourselves. And so we're allowed to then get contracts with syndicates. So they vetted us. A cover holder is someone that now I don't have to talk to them so much as I can just my broker can go to syndicates and effectively get contracts or start new programs for that matter.
Why is it called a cover holder? It's a weird name. And I don't know the answer. I'm just asking.
Well, they use the term cover for insurance cover.
Okay. So the to add a little bit of historical context. So when Lloyd's was started, and I'm going to brutalize the story, but I heard this from Inga Beale, who used to be the CEO of Lloyd, first female CEO of Lloyd's, I believe. When Lloyd started, they were insuring ships.
Right.
And so they would have the piece of paper, I think, in a bar.
Wait a minute. Were they insuring ships or the cargo on the ships?
I think both, right, Aaron?
Okay.
And so essentially what you were doing was betting that ship was gonna make it back. So basically what would happen is each one of the syndicates would go in and write their name and what percent of the ship they wanted to insure. And then the next person would write their name under the person above, which is where the term underwriter came from.
Okay.
You got it.
So
you're smart. And those books, by the way, are those all the the lutein bell. There's a bell from a ship from the late 1700s that didn't make it back, that sunk. That's the bell that is in Lloyd's, and they ring that when something either bad happens or something.
They
good.
still ring it.
Yeah.
I think the last time was when King Charles was crowned.
Okay, so not often.
Yeah.
Not often anymore.
Yeah. So okay, Aaron, we're gonna go backwards to go forwards. We've got the syndicate. Okay, they're the group that's working behind the scenes. That's kind of your people over in that particular London location that are, putting policies together and working with the Lloyd's broker who's running around almost acting. I mean, I hate to say this, guys, but he almost sounds like a lobbyist that's like running around the Lloyd's building. Hey, I got this guy, and I'm assuming
that's kind of how I picture it too.
Yeah, I'm assuming that broker that's running around trying to get these syndicates to come together and maybe 2 or 3, 4, 5, however many, to do this deal and got this guy and da. But I'm assuming you have to be a cover holder to work with a broker to make that happen. But somewhere in this whole mix, there has to be a policy written and actuarially speaking, some data gathered and money spent to figure out that, okay, well, if we're going to do this, let's make sure this is the right policy language, that what we're trying to sell here, actuarially speaking, is going to work. Who's doing all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing I think people or the 250,000 agents that are listening will find,
Absolutely.
I think, interesting is this. When you talk about a Lloyd's broker, right? So there's these outfits that have Lloyd's broker. There's only a certain amount of cover holders.
Yes.
I mean, there isn't a ton. There's Burns and Wilcox, and there's Amwins, and there's me, and there's, so there isn't a ton of them.
And by the way, one of the things the president or former president, he's not there now. You said his name earlier. Hank Watkins told us while we were there, while Bradley and I and some other people were meeting with him, is they were in the process of cutting out some of the fat relative to people here in the States who were cover holders that for whatever reason, maybe they weren't utilizing that, didn't perform well.
I think that happens all the time.
Yeah, that they kind of cut the fat out,
almost
so to
like
speak.
A carrier cutting contracts.
Sure.
Okay, so I got good answers for all these. On the Lloyd's broker, I think that you guys will find interesting is this. A part of the contract, so when we sign a contract, we're going to do this flood deal, right? We would negotiate a commission because we got to pay agents commissions. The Lloyd's broker gets a piece of that commission too.
Right.
Okay.
For brokering the deal. Mm-hmm.
So they're running around to get their small piece, but with a lot of premium, that piece gets bigger.
Sure.
Well, let's say they're not performing. Let's say I need more capacity. I need to be able to write more policies. And my guy or gal's not doing the job. Well, I get called from another one. Hey, I'm going to run around. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to show you hustle you've never seen before. I say, okay, what do I got to do to go with you now? They say just sign a broker of record letter. So a broker of record letter for them is I just sign a broker of record, and they are now in charge of all the premium and everything.
But you've just burned a bridge with somebody.
Very potentially. That's correct.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, we talk about broker of records here, and for them, you do a broker of record when it comes to a Lloyd's broker. So that's one. Two, you talked about cover holders that, cutting the fat. So remember, investment bankers give money to syndicates.
Yep.
Syndicates get money. They have to decide where are they going to give. We talk about capacity. What does that really mean? That just means ability to pay claims. So are we going to do it for property claims? Are we going to do some for flood, for hurricane? Okay, let's say it's for flood as an example. And they set aside a 250,000, right, for every, like an NFIP top policy, 250,000 for every policy. You write 4 policies, they got to have $1 million. Simple math. Okay, so they got $1 million sitting in the bank in case they have to pay. Well, in our case, the numbers are they're crazy to me, but they may give us like 800 million or $1 billion in aggregate, right? But what if you're not writing policies? Their money is sitting in the bank waiting for a claim, and they're not getting any premium for a multitude of reasons.
Balancing act.
It's a balancing act. So they say, well, wait a second. We're not making any money. Our capacity's parked with Aaron,
right.
But Scott is kicking ass in commercial property in Alabama.
Right.
So we're going to take it from this
he
and
needs
give
more
it to
capacity.
this.
He's like, hey guys, I need to write more. They're going to say, sorry, Aaron, we're going to take this capacity and we're going to move it to Scott.
Yeah.
That happens. And then sometimes at some point they just say, this is we're not making any money. This whole thing is just really not working out, Aaron. We're going to cut our losses. We high five, moonwalk out the door, and we're going to Scott.
But to that same point, Aaron, I'm assuming that same exact thing happens when they move that money over to Scott, and he's writing the crap out of commercial property, but my loss ratio,
and dynamite factories.
Yeah, my loss ratio goes up to 120%. So we're burning through that money. And in fact, instead of making a return on it, we're paying out more than we're bringing in. I assume that same example applies where they go, we're out. We're not, we're not doing this.
100%. I think agents, retail agents today, we want to understand, but we don't totally understand. I will tell you that I've gotten a call on a claim that was like $10,000. And they're like, what's going on? And I'm like, what do you mean what's going on? There was a flood and it got in the guys. Well, you said there wasn't going to be any claims over there.
Right.
Well, I mean, these guys have, spreadsheet upon spreadsheet. They know every nickel, and they ask, and they want to prove to you, you have to continue to prove to them that you're sort of worthy of their capacity.
Tell the story about when they asked you on the big claim you had if you would write it again.
Yeah, in the first year of commercial, we were writing commercial flood. And of course, as luck would have it, it was an Ace Hardware store. Hadn't flooded in like 60 years. The same family owned it. It was like 4 feet high of water. And then when I went to Lloyd's, one of the syndicates called me in to call me to the carpet and said, hey, on that claim, would you write that? And and I was a little nervous, and you just realize I was thankfully lucky to understand, I think, where he was going. And I said, hell yes, I'd write it again just for more premium. And he's like, attaboy.
Which is like right answer.
Yeah.
Because if you just said no, it's like, oh, this guy's writing stuff he shouldn't be writing.
I got 2 more questions. You never answered my question because I know you've been writing these down and answering them, doing a great job. When I said, so who's writing the policy and who's doing all the actuarial behind the scenes stuff to get this where it needs to be to start selling in the United States and getting state approval?
Yes. So in our case, we had a few thousand policies on the books. I think agents would find it interesting. We were using Hawksoft at the time. It doesn't have to be this big giant thing. I mean, we had our policies on Hawksoft. We ran those reports, Crystal Report or something, and we just sent it to Lloyd's. Interestingly, when it comes to the policy, they said, "Oh, can you give us a copy of your policy?" And I said, "What policy?" Well, you can be a cover holder. It's your policy.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, man, these guys, if they think I know the first thing about writing,
right.
I mean, it's like you, Scott. Could you write a policy today? Hell,
yeah.
I mean, you
Well,
could.
GPT could
No, I
write it
could
for us.
because I'd get on Chat GPT and say, act as if you're an expert in contract law and insurance and write me a flood policy.
Probably not the way to get a Lloyd's cover holder.
Well, it'd
agreement.
probably be
Well,
halfway
in a
there.
sense, we did a little bit of that before ChatGPT.
Well, I'm saying you don't tell them you're doing that though.
Well, yeah, right. So,
But we
okay.
got the policy. We Frankenstein and stitch one together.
Right.
So you sourced it from you like I like this part of this policy, etc.
Correct. And in fact, when you sell it to them, one of the things we said is, hey, we want to add this additional, I'll say this additional coverage that we thought was important. And then when we had, all of a sudden we had claims, it was like, there's a reason why most other people don't have this in their policy.
Sure.
It's like, oh shit, here we go.
Yeah.
But they do modeling. So people say, I got an idea. There's generally models. I could tell you we spend a fair amount of money on certain modeling for underwriting things. It's expensive. I want to do an earthquake program, but and Lloyd says, okay, Aaron, sounds good. Let's do it. What model are you going to use? And I'm like, oh, well, I don't know. So I call them and they're like, yeah, it's about $200,000 a year if you want to license the model, So there is a bit of a barrier to entry on that end.
Right.
But to answer your question, Scott, yes, we came up with our own policy. One thing I think that for retail agents that say, I'm going to be a cover holder, it sounds like a good idea. The one thing that's the biggest challenge for retail agents is this. If you're a retail agent, you don't generally, and I'm using Scott as you generally don't care. If there's a claim, it's like, hey, my money, I don't give a shit, right?
Right.
But Scott, you say something every time that I think of it every time, and that is write good business for the companies. And I always say, wonder why you say that. Well, maybe because you're a captive, you were a captive, and they bred that into you, which is, hey, you got to be profitable, right? And yes, there's contingency bonuses some agency make, but when you're a cover holder, they're very concerned, especially if you started retail. You got to take that retail hat off and put on underwriter.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's difficult because if you have the pen, you're like, oh, well, we need to see some more revenue. Let's just write some more policies and let's just, it's a little sketchy. Let's do it. But one claim, and I tell them this, and I'm sure a lot of them do, there isn't one flood policy worth to me to ruin a program.
Sure.
Yeah.
There just isn't. But that's a hard concept, and maybe it's something you can do when you're a little bit longer in the business. But let's face it, when you're scratching these scratch agents, they got to just write a policy, man, right? They don't.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, hey, okay, that company's gone. We'll just move on to the next one. That's not my problem.
So I have three questions. Is the cover holder responsible for the setting up the TPA, the adjusting, setting up the inspections, all the ancillary stuff that it takes to, whether it's like near map or something like, is the cover holder responsible for that, or does the broker handle that?
It's an option.
Okay.
Give you an option. Do you want to do
that? He gets a bigger cut if he's doing it.
Well, that's the last thing I figured I could handle. I mean, I'm not that, like I said, I'm not that smart either. And I'm like, I don't know the first thing about, handling a claim or wanting to. So I give that responsibility to them, and they have contracts with Sedgwick and of course some of the bigger different ones out there. But to answer your question, Bradley, you can do it if you want to.
Okay. So two more questions. Break down, and this one, you might not want to answer this one. Break down the money. How does that work?
In what way, Bradley?
Commission,
I'm here to answer the question, but
revenue, what happens, commission, what happens at the end, what's the average commission on a policy for a cover holder? How does that break out? How much goes to Lloyd's, how much goes to the broker, how much goes to you, how much goes to the agent, and then what happens at the end of the year when we have a surplus?
Okay.
This is something a lot of people don't know. Yeah, and if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to.
No, well, look, I don't want to be that guy that comes on and doesn't really, it talks but doesn't say anything. So I should probably
this is the part where if you're an agent, you get mad at your cover holder. I'm joking.
Well, it's the part that goes back to what I said when I started this podcast that Mike Stromso said. So if you're profitable, guys, you go make a bunch of money.
Yeah.
So, okay. So let's talk about the money. Generally, your broker helps you because they have all the knowledge of London. So that's it. You
Right.
need them because you don't have the knowledge. And their job is to negotiate the best commission, the best. It's like a football. You have an agent. Why do you have an agent? Because they go in there and they're not emotional. They go in and negotiate the best they can. So that's what their job is. So I think it's different. I'm not being coy about it, but I do believe certain lines there's different commissions for different lines.
Right.
And I'd probably say it's probably between 17 and a half points to 27, depending on, okay. So let's break it down. So someone says, oh my God, you might make 25% commission. Yeah, but I got to spend $100,000 a year on a model. And I got to spend,
Right.
an MGA platform is $8,000 a month.
Not
It
to mention if you're
isn't
hiring
$200,
underwriters too.
Hawks Off seat license. I mean, you're talking big stuff. And you need a programmer now. Today, you have to have a programmer, a team of programmers, really. So, yes, I'm certainly not saying you can't be successful. There certainly can be. And at the end of the day, there is generally a potential profit. And they told me, don't count on it. And I said, okay. In the first 2 years, we got a decent profit. I'm going to be honest, right? I said, wow, this is amazing.
On your 25%.
Well, the profits based on operating profit. They take out their profit.
Okay, yeah. So talk about that. So go into that, how that works.
So there's a contingency profitability that basically they write up and say, okay, we're going to take our expenses out, our operating expense, claims expense, and at the end there's a profit, and we'll negotiate. You get a cut, and we get a cut.
Okay, so if there's $1 million left over, they get a cut, you get a cut, et cetera. And that's really where the money is in this.
What's that percentage normally average between Lloyd's getting their cut and Aaron Farmer as the cover holder getting his cut? What's that percentage? Just an average.
I'd probably think 15% is probably an average
that you get
of the profit.
That's
15% total. Okay.
Yeah.
And that would go
break
to
it all down. Now, can it be a big number? For us, we're small, so no, it's not a huge number. I mean, could I see it being someday a gigantic number? I can, but let me tell you this: on January 8th of this year, we had the Pineapple Express come through California and wipe out. My profit was gone 8 days in the year for the next 2 years. Yeah. So when they do the profit, it's for a year, and then they wait one more year to make sure a claim doesn't come in 364 days.
Right.
Yeah.
So you wait 2 years for it. And I can tell you in the last 2 years, we've done a great job, but we're not getting basically a profit.
Yeah. So last question. This is a little weird one. Aaron Farmer owns or let's say it's not Aaron. Let's say it's Joe Schmo has a cover holder agreement and wants to sell his agency. How does that work? Does the buyer continue that? What's the stuff with that? You know what I mean? I've always wondered if somebody buys an agency that has a cover holder agreement, do they then get that cover holder agreement, or do they have to sell it? Does it work similar to if we buy an agency that has travelers and we don't have travelers, we have to sell travelers on continue? How does all that play out?
So I would say, it's very difficult now to get approved by Lloyd's. What they would do now, it's just expensive. It's not like we're special, anyone special. It's just like what they would probably say is, look, if Scott's got an idea today to write dynamite manufacturing in Alabama, and they think it's a good idea, they'd probably say, hey, are you friends with Aaron Farmer? Yeah, I know Aaron. Okay, why don't you go talk to Aaron and you guys work out a deal?
Yeah.
And because it speeds up the process.
Yes.
Instead of waiting 18 months, you don't have 18 months.
So they would sort of strong arm the buyer into cutting a deal like that with somebody else who's not retiring, essentially.
Well, most likely, but I will tell you, I went to target markets for the first time, so I know about Lloyd's. I don't know about the programs with domestic carriers.
Yeah.
And I was amazed. I had 3 meetings. These people call you, and you guys maybe, I know a lot we talk about, and Scott, Bradley, I see you talk a lot about valuations and agencies, right? Selling. I think you have a lot of knowledge about that. I don't have a ton of knowledge, but when I was there, I spoke to multiple M&A companies. In fact, I ended up talking to Matt Namoli about it. He's a great guy, by the way, and
Yeah.
I had a really nice conversation with him because one of the people I talked to was, I think, someone that worked with him. Anyway, I sat down and they said, "Okay, you were looking to sell," and I said, "Well, no, I still got a ways to go, but I don't know what I'm worth." And when they were telling me some of the multiples, I
Yeah.
said, "Is it advantageous that I have a cover holder status or whatever?" And they basically said, "Yeah, absolutely. If it's profitable, yes." Um, and they started throwing some numbers. I'm like,
You're
are
like,
you
I might be wanting to sell.
are you crazy?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "No, like, but of course then it's like, well, how many more years? And then there's the buyouts. There's a lot to it. Um,
Aaron, I got 2 more questions and we got to run. You as a cover holder, I know Bradley, at least I think there's been some times when he had some tough to place risks that he got done through Lloyd's. And all I'm doing is speaking on behalf of the agents listening to this right now. If somebody has a hard to place risk, like we talked about earlier, it's got hair on it or whatever, maybe Lloyd's might be a last resort, and they want to get a syndicate involved to write that, the best way to do that is to get in touch with a cover holder. And if they did get in touch with a cover holder, your jam is flood, but you also have relationships over there with other brokers, syndicates, and probably other cover holders too. So are you able, like, I know Bradley, have you written something property wise that was kind of through Aaron, but he directed you to the right spot? Is that how
I
that?
don't think we've done that yet.
Okay.
No, we do a lot through. We have several cover holders here locally. We've done
Stuff like that through. Okay.
Yeah.
But am I on the right track though, Aaron, with that? Is that kind of how that works?
yeah. So usually, again, we'll use the big box name, but like a Burns and Wilcox.
Sure.
Well, I can tell you this. Some agents might find it interesting, and now it's happening a lot, right? Let's say there's Lloyd's paper on a lot of HO3s or DP3s out there, right? Because the market's kind of a mess. And you're talking, let's say it's a $2,000 premium. They're there for a long, long time, and still, like my broker, when he first was cutting his teeth, he was taking Burns and Wilcox. He worked for Burns and Wilcox. He was the broker for Burns and Wilcox, and they have a team. They have a lot of people there. But he would take that $2,000 risk, and he'd show up in this building that you're looking at right here on a $2,000 risk to get every one of those were getting approved.
Yeah.
Every one. So when agents go, "Why does it take 5 days to get a quote?" Because they're running in there and still getting them signed.
Yeah.
But yes. So if it's an open market risk, a cover holder would generally go to their Lloyd's broker and ask, and say, "Hey, can you run in the building and see if you can get some?"
Yeah.
If they have that expertise.
Right.
Some do, some don't. Some may be, "Hey, I only really know E&O, professional lines. I'm not the guy." But the brokerages are pretty big, right? They may have a team of 10 brokers in one place, not like a single guy. It may be 10 men and women, and each of them have a different specialty. So they just go to that person and say, "Hey, Scott," or, if it's Bradley, "Hey," Bradley says to Scott, "Scott, you know this, right?" "Yeah, I do. All right, can you go run and get it placed?" "Oh, absolutely. That's my jam."
Last question, and I have to go. Let's say an agent listening to this show right now, I'm going to throw a name out there, and it's kind of like, throwing something at a dartboard. Jack Wingate up in North Carolina. Jack's, he's a creative guy. Let's say he wakes up one night after eating some bad coleslaw, just straight up in bed, and he's like, "My God, that is the most brilliant insurance idea ever." Is there a place, meaning website or conference? I heard you say target markets earlier. Is there a place for somebody like him to go to talk to a syndicate or broker or cover holder to present that idea to a syndicate to possibly make that happen? And we'll just assume that Jack has the financial wherewithal to be able to carry that to the finish line.
So yes. So when I first started this, Lloyd's does a really good job of keeping this, it's like a paradigm wrapped in what is it? The term goes, the cosmic thing, and they do a real good job of keeping it sort of secret. They don't think so, but to us it is. Like it's this big gray area. So when I met these people, they all came over to this thing called Chart. A lot of underwriters got to meet a lot of agents, and there were some deals that were made. Okay. But what I would say is, because like you guys hold this, your podcast, which kicks ass, and 1 million people have watched it. And if you get someone like me, it's getting easier where someone could reach out. And if someone wants to reach out to me, I am happy to refer you to my broker.
Right.
And, and make that relationship, and then they could run with it and go from there.
Sure.
But that's effectively
how you do it.
Way.
Yeah. So here's my ask, and Aaron, I thank you so much for being on. We got to run because got another podcast to start in about a minute. But here's my ask, okay? If in that big world of Lloyd's, we have anybody that is in a Lloyd's syndicate that listens to this podcast. Now, we've got people that listen to this podcast all over the world. I just showed Bradley some of the stats yesterday. What were some of those weird places? Oh, we're like the number Pakistan. 57 podcast in the Ukraine, right?
Yeah. Shout out to Ukraine.
Yeah, shout out Ukraine. Go get them. So if anybody in a Lloyd's syndicate in London, okay, I'm talking UK, like accent in there every day or every other day, if you're hearing this at the sound of my voice, reach out to myself or Bradley. We would love to have you on the podcast to kind of give us that, inside baseball feel, even more so than Aaron can, because you're doing it every day.
Have a couple program ideas too.
Absolutely. But I would love to have somebody who's actually in the building on the podcast, because if you think I got questions for
I'll give you a better idea. Let's go to the building and do the first podcast ever done inside the Lloyd's building.
When? Tomorrow? You want to go tomorrow?
Sure.
I can get a Delta flight right now.
I need you to call Laurel for me.
Baby, Aaron, take Aaron with us. Well, we really do need to do that, Bradley. Seriously.
Aaron and I actually met with his London broker with a couple program ideas, but also we talked about doing an interview there.
Okay.
So Aaron, that's definitely going to happen one day.
Aaron, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I love you very much. Guys, as I end every podcast, rewards come from action, not discussion. Get your ass out from behind that desk today. Go out into the big bad world. Make money for your wife, for your husband, for your kids' college fund, for your parents and your in-laws that are struggling out there. Go make money for them. Become the mayor of your village and write good business for the agencies that you represent, and write good business for the companies that you represent, especially if that is a Lloyd syndicate. Bradley Flowers, I love you.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Aaron.
Aaron, we love you.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, sir.
Love you back.
Guys, you are listening to the Insurance Guys podcast, and we love each one of you. Thank you so much for being a part of our family, and we'll see you back here real soon. Take care.